Hey guys, welcome to Real Patriots Fishing. Today I wanted to go over how I pour some of my plastics. If you've ever been in the store, going through and seeing how much Yamamoto's are or Zooms are, you know right now that plastic is going through the roof. So to save you a little bit of money, you can invest in some of this stuff you see in the background here, kind of up front. What? What's wrong?
Nothing, just laughing.
Oh, you messed me up. It's all right. It's all right. All right. Now I gotta start here. Always works better when you have a microphone on.
That's right.
All right, guys. So to get started pouring plastics, you need a couple different essentials. All right, as you can see here in the background, you obviously, you're gonna need some either old plastics, which I have a bunch over here that you can see. We'll get into that a little bit later. You need a microwave to remelt your plastics, or you can buy new plastic, which you see, I bought this a couple years ago and don't really use it. We'll get into that later too. Basically, you need something to melt your plastic in. Glass preferred. You don't obviously want to put metal or plastic in there. You need some type of mold. We'll get into a little bit about that later on, different types of molds that you can use. I buy these clamps that go on top to help clamp it a little tighter shut so you don't lose some plastic all on the side. Some type of stir, butter knife works great. Something to cut your old plastics with, scissors. And then your measuring cup system, basically, which if you get real serious into it and you start really kind of starting from scratch, this is where this comes in a little bit more, because you're going to be measuring salt, different adhesives, different colors, different everything, and you're going to want to know your measurements. I'm not that much into it. I basically use one size. You need an injector. There's a bunch of different types of injectors out there that you can purchase. I think this one was like 40 or 50 bucks. And I think it's a 5 ounce. That's pretty much it. If you're just going to strictly remelt your plastics and start from, everything that you already have, that will get you started. The most expensive thing is probably going to be your microwave and your mold. The molds are really expensive depending on the types of molds that you buy. So that's kind of where I'm going to start. You also probably want to buy some dyes as well. So I like Dead On Plastics, not sponsored by them, obviously. You want to buy a couple different colors, green pumpkin, your colors that you're going to use. Worm oil, that's basically to lubricate your aluminum block before you inject in there. And also, you're going to want to use it to put it on your product, your plastics, after you go ahead and pour them so they don't stick together. Also, glitter. You can buy glitter from baitplastics.com, Lure Parts, AI Plastics, Dead On Plastics. You could go to Hobby Lobby and buy glitter. That's not really a specific thing. The dyes are probably going to be a little bit more specific. Also, there's a thing called heat stabilizer. Basically, that just helps you as you're melting the plastic so you don't burn the plastic and it catches fire. I don't really use it unless I'm using brand new Plastic-Tol, because there's heat stabilizer in old plastics, and everything that I basically pour is from old plastics. There's hardener. So hardener is exactly what it says. It's going to make your bait stiffer the more that you put in there, and you're only going to want to add that to cold plastic as well, because it will burn. Then you got your scents: garlic scent, coffee scent, anise scent, herring scent. Whatever scents you want to put in there is what you can use. And this is just a little bit of more oil, basically. So I want to kind of start with talking about different types of molds. So there's a few different styles. You'll hear the term silicone mold versus aluminum block mold versus a CNC mold versus an open pore mold. This is an open pore silicone mold. This is an open pore CNC aluminum block mold. The benefit of these is that you can pour really quick straight out of melting. They're cheaper, but they're not as detailed oriented and specific to what you want to be pouring probably. More than likely, the baits that you're using that you want to pour are going to be from your injectable CNC aluminum molds. And these range anywhere from $75 to $1,000. Most of the ones that I have, these ones here, I'll show you basically, were all under $175. I know that seems expensive, but when you start getting into this and you start pouring the molds and pouring the baits that you want, you're going to end up saving yourself a lot of money in the long run, because what you're going to start doing is you're going to start saving every bit of plastic that you have. So an injectable mold is pretty much what it is. You're going to inject Plasitol into the mold. So if you look at these molds, there's two halves that go together. This mold is a little bit more on the cheaper side. Now it's a Senko mold, so it doesn't have any way to secure the mold together. The more expensive CNC molds, they come with these fasteners that you just stick on there. It's got two studs on each side, and basically that's what you're going to inject on. So those clamps that I was showing you in the very beginning, it's just a little bit of extra protection. If you're pouring Plasitol and it's too hot, you'll get a lot of squeeze out on the sides. These just clamp it down that much more tighter, right? That much more tighter, that much more easier. So that's your basic different styles of molds. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them on anglingai.com. You can find them on baits.com, doityourselfmolds.com. There's literally tons of places to find them. And what I did was, since I fish with lizards the most, that was really one of the first ones I bought. Now, once I bought an injectable one, I never really looked back at open pour, because I never really felt the need that I wanted them, and I really didn't like the product that came out of them. So when you do an open pour mold, your top side is going to be flat. So just know everything you pour is going to be flat if it's an open pour mold. So depending on what you're making, depending on the baits that you're trying to do, it may be what you want. For me, I don't. So what I do before I start to pour here, and basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through a down and dirty class on how to pour. So you open up your mold. The first thing that I do is I take a little bit of oil, drop in each cavity, and basically take my finger. You could take a paintbrush, you could take whatever you want, and just kind of put that oil all around the mold where you're going to be injecting. It doesn't got to be perfect. You know, none of this has got to be perfect. And what that does is it allows for the silicone to come out a lot easier and not stick to the metal. Put your fasteners back on here and set it to the side. All right. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to open up your microwave. You're going to grab the color of plastic that you want. So let's say, you know, that's all my old plastic. So let me kind of go over that a little bit here. So what I do is I steal all my wife's Chinese food containers and I throw all my plastics in here. When I come home, from the kayak, I grab everything I got and I put it all together and I separate it by color. So, pinks and reds, green pumpkin obviously has the most, miscellaneous, June bug colors. Then you got your reds, your browns, your blacks, your blues, kind of whatever you're fishing with. So what I'll do is I'll just show you like some remelt stuff. So let's say I want to pour, a brown lizard. And this is what it looks like when it comes out of your Pyrex. And what I do is I just go in and I start cutting. This is a little bit tough because it's been there. And as you can see, this bait has salt in it because all the salt has settled to the bottom. You know, that's important for durability. Sometimes it'll help it float. You know, there's a fine line between how much salt goes into a bait. You know, companies have perfected their recipes over the last couple years. You know, and most of that's all proprietary. You're not going to find it. If you do, you're lucky. So a lot of it is trial and error. When I use straight Plasitol, I basically will write down how much Plasitol I have in there, how much dye I used, and then I'll start with a little bit of salt, a little bit of hardener, and I'll pour a bait, you know, an open pour bait, and then I'll play with it to see, do I like the durability? Do I like the stretch? Do I like it? You know, I'll throw it in a glass of water. Does it float how I want? So again, there's a lot of trial and error. Stick this in here. I put 4 minutes on. We'll let it run for 4 minutes. We'll stir it up when it comes out, and we'll probably stick it back in there a little bit more. I know a lot of guys will check the temperatures. I started checking the temperatures in the very beginning when I do this. I don't remember what the temperature has to be, but you'll kind of know if it's liquid enough for you. You know, and the other thing is the ambient air temperature plays a role in how fast this stuff will cool off and how fast it will come back to its stiffness. And you'll see that as soon as we suck it up and inject it, you know, it goes pretty quick. It goes pretty fast. You'll see. The other thing is a couple other key items that you probably want to have. You know, safety goggles is probably a good idea. I'm not the safest person. A good pair of gloves, because when this stuff comes out, it's obviously going to be hot. When you grab this injector and you suck up, you know, 175 degree plastic, your hand's right here, and you know, it could burn you. All this stuff could burn you. So you got to be careful what you're working with. I have this little mat that I put on my wood top. If Plasitol gets on this, it's going to stick to that mat. If Plasitol gets on my wood, it's going to peel right off. So I always pour over my wood. Like I said, I'll put on an extra clamp on the side. I'll make sure it's out of the way. Move some of this stuff out of the way. Position it kind of how I want it. Usually what I'll do is I want the injector port closest to me, because when I move from the Pyrex to that, I want it really close so I'm not dripping it all over the place, because it will drip. Little tip about your injectors. All injectors come apart like this. You know, and it's just a plunger style. That's from the other day. It's easy, just clean it off. Every so often, if not every pour, you know, you probably should be applying a little bit of oil to your O-ring. This just makes your O-ring last longer. It really has no other purpose. It lubricates the inside a little bit for you. Same thing, you have an O-ring in here. Just put a little dab of oil on each side, run your finger around it, and that's it. Screw it back on, and you're pretty much ready to inject right away. So it's been about 3 minutes. I'm going to pop it open. You can see here it's starting to become liquid. You know, it's not 100%. You can see it's still chunky in there. So I'm going to go ahead, throw it back in for that last minute. Then when we pull it out, basically I'm going to stir it. Make sure all the salt's off the bottom. Stir it for a good minute, probably close to a minute, maybe 30 seconds. This would be when you were gonna add in some glitter. So let's say, you know, we wanna add in some glitter. So we'll add in like a little bit of red glitter to this one. This is where you could put, you know, your scent. I typically, if you're gonna use garlic scent, the one thing that I've learned is a little bit goes a long way. The coffee scent, I found I don't really care for that much. The one that I'm using, So most of the time I will not scent anything. If anything, it'll just be a little drop of garlic. Because usually what I'm doing is I'm using dip and glow when I'm on the water anyway, which a lot of people do. So now we can see this, you know, it's pretty much boiling and bubbling. You know, try not to inhale it. That's the other thing. You know, you probably want to do this in an open area. If you have a fan, running a fan. I'm in a big garage, almost a 3-car garage right now, with a blower in the background, so I'm not too worried about it, but I simply would not be sticking my head over the top of it and inhaling it. You know, and when you put your glitter in, you can measure if you want, or you can just throw it in there and see how you like it. So a lot of this is how you want it, and a lot is trial and error. So after I stir, I just take this, I set it down. I'm not really worried about it. Take my injector. I'm gonna stick my injector at least down to here when I suck it up. And I'm gonna suck up the whole thing as much as I can. Okay, so that's it. Straight from the injector, straight to the port, push down slowly but firmly, and when you come and feel it stop, that's when you stop. You don't have to force it down in there. Then you lift up. You can inject a little bit more on the top, do a little bit of overflow, and then squirt out the rest back inside so you can use it again. I'm gonna set this to the side. Literally about 30 seconds, this is all gonna cool off, and we're gonna be able to check it out. So if you're doing this in the summertime, obviously, you might want to put a fan on it and have a cool air blowing on it. It'll help go a little bit faster. But it's 30 degrees outside. It's 59 degrees in my garage right now. It's not going to take long for us to open these up and have baits that are ready. You can see the stir already. It's already dry for the most part. So, you know, if you want to become really, you know, efficient at this, as this stuff is cooling, you're peeling off your Plasitol, you're putting it back in, you're doing your cleanup everywhere else. And again, I'm a DIYer. I'm not selling these baits. I'm using these baits on the water for myself and my buddies. You know, again, look, it was probably 30 seconds and that bait is already hard, right? So you take that, you throw it back in, clean this up, close it. This is already ready to go. So if I wanted to, I could be throwing this back in the microwave. That could be remelting, and I could be opening up the mold, which we're gonna do right now. I'm not gonna remelt, but take the sides off, take these off, the studs, and all you gotta do is you open it and it comes right apart. And there you go. There's your baits that you just poured with your old plastics, and they pinch off, or you can cut them off if you want them to look really perfect. Throw your extra Plasitol back in here. And usually what I'll do is I'll have some water out here in a bowl or a cup, and I'll throw all these in water so they cool off really fast so you can package them. But basically that is, you know, taking your old plastics, cutting them up, remelting them, sticking them into the mold. You know, then you can just buy yourself a couple baggies and package them up how you want, or throw them in your old bags. That is do-it-yourself plastics in a nutshell.